Hey everyone, TJ here. So, welcome to the first webinar of the Eat Well, Be Well series. For this particular week, we're going to be talking about nutrients. And so, we will move on to the next slide. So, for the first part, I'm going to talk about feeding your superpowers. We'll talk about what that means exactly when it comes to like the fuel, the building, the protection, and the prevention. And then the last piece will be like a weekly action item in the sense of review, and then the challenge, which is totally optional. So we will address questions at the very end, which is fine. So I'll talk for roughly about 20-25 minutes, and then I will allow questions to flow in, and I'll address questions that were brought up from the pre-program survey. All right, let's get started. All right, so feeding your superpowers. So certain foods or food groups have, certain things that are great at what they do. So for like example, we could talk about carbohydrates. I think a lot of us know that, carbohydrates are our energy source. Things with like the B vitamins and the fiber and anything else additional that comes from eating grains. Some grains have protein to them. But let's talk about, some of these other ones that might not be as well known. So for the protection piece, we'll talk about healthy fats, what those healthy fats are, what they do, why they're important to our body and our goals. And then next, we'll talk about protein. Protein's another one that we're pretty familiar with, just like our carbohydrates. We use them to build, or in this case, to repair. There are, the body needs protein for cellular repair, for any other repair within our body. Muscles need to be repaired. No matter what sort of workout we do. And then lastly, I know this last one can be a given, but a lot of us, know that we should be better about our fruits and vegetable intake. But fruits and veggies are important for the prevention of certain cancers and diseases and other things that diet can really kind of take care of if we were a little more mindful in getting those things in our diet. We all have, our moments. Some of us do better than others, and I myself, could definitely, improve upon, my diet as well. So I would never lie to anybody and say, "Oh yeah, I'm the poster child for a healthy diet." Like I said, I have my moments too. So let's move on to the next slide. All right, so we're going to start off with the fuel portion. Like I said, carbohydrates is fuel. We need fuel in order to, get us through the day. Whether you're a child and you're trying to get through school, breakfast is important, but it's a primary source for the brain. Again, to help us with focus and to pay attention. And so, carbohydrates are just as important when we talk about, like the sort of activity that we do, whatever goals we have, maybe that activity or that workout, or let's say like it's a marathon, like the Twin Cities Challenge from this past week. That duration of activity, is going to be a requirement for, making sure that we, have that energy source to make it through that run or any workout for that matter. So when it comes to the sources of carbohydrates, we want to make sure that we're kind of sticking to the things that, that come from plants, that come from the ground, that are grown, in the soil. Those are going to be the better ones versus, things that are more processed. Um, but we'll talk about that when we get to that next slide. And so avoiding minimally processed foods, but also making sure that, a serving of a carbohydrate is going to provide enough fiber, for that particular meal to be able to keep you full, to help balance out blood sugar, and then any other aspect of fiber that is super important. A lot of us do kind of miss out on that 30 to 35 grams of sorry, fiber that we need daily. That's super important. So we'll talk about the sources of carbohydrates. Like I said, fiber rich is what we're aiming for. A serving of carbohydrates should definitely get us, 3 grams of fiber, if not more. So I'll talk about the sources of fiber. So within these first two boxes, we talk about, things like oatmeal and quinoa and chickpeas, beans, brown rice, lentils, sweet potatoes, those are all great sources of carbohydrates and, obviously good sources of fiber, along with, some other nutrients and minerals and things that come from those foods. Other sources from the second box would be other grains that, maybe aren't as familiar to us. Um, things that we don't necessarily see right away when we're grocery shopping, but things like millet and amaranth, these are what they would call like ancient grains. But farro, spelt, bulgur, rye, kamut, those are all grains as well. Again, things that we're not familiar with, unless you just truly were searching for them. For this last box, now this particular box is going to be that minimum, that processed food portion that I was talking about. So with, these processed carbohydrates, things like, bagels and breads and English muffins and cereals and tortillas and waffles and pastas and such, like we want 100% whole grain, and those things will have dietary fiber to them. For example, like let's say if you wanted to have a sandwich, you would want to make sure that that slice of bread was going to have at least 2 grams of fiber per slice in order to be something that's going to, provide the most nutritional benefit for you. But going back to the process piece, is that these things do break down a little quicker in the body, in our stomach. But one other thing to highlight too is that, people have sensitivity issues to, gluten and, or they may have celiac disease and they may not be able to eat these things. So they have to figure out other aspects. The one thing that I do understand, that I do get, is the convenience factor, especially when it's easy to, be able to open, the bread bag and pull out a couple of slices versus the time it would take to, make, quinoa or brown rice, or, of course you get, beans from a can, and that's easy too. So it's just the choices that we make, when it comes to our carbohydrates. So next we're going to talk about building. So we know that proteins are important for building. They build muscle tissue. They help, in this case, they talk about maintaining and supporting the immune system, but also to help, with like other functions of the body. Like I said, cellular repair. So it gets very, very kind of deep and microscopic, into the body versus, kind of like when you think of, rebuilding a car, those are bigger things that you could see versus like what you would see like deep and in the body. Other things about protein is, aiming to, limit saturated fat. Pretty much like the less legs that, a certain protein source has, the less fat it's going to have. So, four-legged things, or four-legged animals, not really things, but pigs, cows, those will have higher saturated fat sources. Um, even if you go with like a lean protein source, even if it is four legs, we'll still have some saturated fat. But when we talk about like two-legged animals, those will have less fat. And then plant, sourced protein is definitely going to have none, if minimal amount of fat. All right. And so we'll talk about the grilled versus the fried and the skin versus the skinless when I move into the next portion, talking about what protein sources are important. So the quality of protein, obviously it's going to matter, but again, choosing something that's lean is the best bet, especially if we have any concerns of cholesterol, the family history, with cholesterol or anything else that really kind of requires us to be watchful of what we eat. But from like a cooking method standpoint, things that are grilled or baked or broiled or, again, in this case, pop open a can of tuna, make a tuna salad sandwich, is better than, like let's say doing like a crab cake that would be, probably fried or pan fried at least. That tuna salad sandwich is going to have more nutritional value, which is beneficial for us. So skinless chicken, skinless turkey, or ground chicken, ground turkey, eggs, whether it's the omega-3 type or the regular eggs, lean cuts of beef or lean cuts of ham. If you're looking for snack-like things to eat, whether you're at your desk or you're traveling, finding like a low sugar like jerky. I've seen them in Costco. They're nice and they're convenient to have. Any sort of dairy product, cottage cheese, milk, Greek yogurt, any sort of probiotic yogurt like kefir, which is slightly tangier than yogurt. Kind of, I would say it's kind of like a required taste. But other things like nut butters and seed butters are going to be great sources of protein as well, along with like healthy fats. But we'll talk about that in the next slide. Cold water fish, salmon, tuna, halibut, those are all great sources of protein and again, healthy fats, aka omega-3s. And then, other things, ground beef, pork chops, beans are a great source of protein, even though we kind of stuck them under the carb category as well. And then last, deli meat. This one is kind of a question mark because I put next to that the asterisk of nitrates and nitrites. These are carcinogens or things that are cancer causing. And if you have any history of cancer in the family, or if you've had cancer, there are things that you want to avoid. Someone asked in a question about where do I find this on the label? And it's either going to be on the label right underneath the lunch meat saying may contain nitrates or nitrites. Otherwise, you can look in the ingredient list and you would find it as sodium nitrate or sodium nitrite. So those are things to keep in mind as well. All right. So for the next piece, I'm going to talk about protection. So fats are our protection piece. They're the piece that are going to help with, protecting the heart, protecting the arteries, maintaining healthy hormone levels. And, they also do help with the absorption of certain fat soluble vitamins such as A, D, E, and K. So vitamin D would be, like you think the sunshine vitamin. Um, and so obviously vitamin D also appears in like mushrooms, but vitamin D is important. And so we want to make sure that we're not necessarily doing a low fat diet or no fat diet, just because it would make it challenging for those fat soluble vitamins to be absorbed um, in its entirety. But they are important for the joints and for our hair, our skin, our nails. We want to make sure that our skin looks youthful and that our hair doesn't look dried out, or our skin doesn't look dried out. And so that's why healthy fats are important. They also do help keep us full, when we're eating a meal. I've heard people saying, oh, I just eat a salad but no dressing. You could have a vinaigrette that's got olive oil in it. That's definitely a healthy fat, but at least it's going to help that salad stick around a lot longer than just eating it by itself. And let's say it's just all veggies and no protein and no healthy fats. But keeping our energy levels, stable, and helping with blood sugar and just, feeling better mentally. We don't want to feel foggy, when we're working throughout the day because, we have a no fat or low fat diet, something to think about. So we'll talk about what sort of fats are important. Again, that brain power, that mental clarity, and that whole memory aspect is important, when it comes to healthy fats. So let's move on. So fats, there are different kinds of fat. There was another question asking about different types of fat. Healthy fats are like polyunsaturated or monounsaturated fats. Those are good fats. Those are the things that we need, for our heart and for clarity and memory and mental, like focus, along with like other things, again, hormone levels. But raw nuts, avocados, nut butters, or seed butters, assuming that we don't have any sort of peanut allergies. Cold water fish, the salmon, the tuna, those are important. Black olives or olive oil, flax seeds or flax oil, pumpkin seeds, pumpkin oil. Those are all great sources of, healthy fats. Omega 3s are a little different just because you find those more so within like fish. Whereas like omega 6s are going to come more from, the oils. And sometimes we get way more omega 6 than we do omega 3. So we need to make sure that we're aiming for more threes and less of the sixes. So that ratio is more like 2 to 1. So twice as many omega 3s to omega 6s. So that ratio is 2 to 1. Right? All right. So the next piece, as we come towards the very end, we're going to talk about prevention. Fruits and vegetables are the prevention piece to the superpower with our, with helping our body or, feeding our body. They provide vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, polyphenols, or things that are very cancer preventive, or like the prevention of cancers. They also do contribute to repairing things within the body themselves. They're what we would call like the support staff, or maybe the sidekick if we're sticking with our superhero theme. We could go with that. So when we talk about the colors of fruits and vegetables, those deeper brighter, more vibrant colors are definitely the way to go. We definitely get more reds and yellows in our diet. Greens, purples, and blues, those are actually the less of the veggies and the fruits that get eaten. So those are the ones that we need to aim for the most. The next slide, I think, is going to really kind of highlight, the importance of what these, colors do. So I think that's something that will be different. That will be a learning piece. So we'll talk about getting three, colorful, at least three colors on every plate. So again, that serving, piece with fruits and vegetables is 8 to 11. So we want, 8 to 11 servings of veggies and fruits, and then not forgetting about herbs and spices. Herbs and spices definitely have their place as well, for the vitamins, the minerals, and the things that they provide, in helping the body. So we'll move on. So here is a color code, which I think is great for, why, fruits and vegetables are important. So reds are to help improve heart and blood, also helpful with the joints. And you see the fruits and the vegetables that are around that particular circle and why they're important. Orange is to prevent cancer and promote collagen growth. So collagen is the aspect that kind of keeps like the cheeks and like the lips and, things from like thinning and making it look like, they're, like there's less, like fullness or whatnot to like our lips or our cheeks, and so collagen is important. Collagen is just as important at keeping that shine with our hair so that it doesn't look dull. Yellow is for heart, vision, digestion, immune system. We get enough bananas in our diet, but what about like pineapple or mangoes or pears or yellow bell peppers? Those are important too. So this next one, when I talked about veggies and fruits that we don't get enough of from a color standpoint, would be the greens, and then we'll talk about blue and purple. Green are detoxifying veggies and fruits. They're going to detoxify the body from, let's say harmful, metals, free radicals that, are in the body. So free radicals are anything that could be inflammatory, things like sugar or, maybe certain chemicals or certain, metals that could be harmful. It's like imagining like there's bullets, that are just kind of flying around, in your body that could be damaging to the veins, the arteries, and the rest of the body. And so those green vegetables are just as important, when it comes to improving the immune system and detoxifying the body. Blue and purple are, powerful antioxidants. Whether you are trying to improve your eye health or you've got diabetes and you're trying to, help maintain like a healthy blood sugar level, blue and purple vegetables definitely have a place. Like I said, one of the least eaten colors of the rainbow. And so aiming for more of those as well. And then lastly, we talk about white. Now, when I'm referring to white vegetables, I'm not necessarily talking about potatoes, but not that potatoes don't have a place. Obviously, it depends on how you cook them. But when I talk about white, I'm talking about onions, garlic, mushrooms, parsnips, cauliflower. Those particular vegetables are going to be things that reduce cancer, or help with like the immune system when it comes to like foreign invaders, viruses and such, that can be harmful, to the body. From an inflammatory standpoint, when we talk about inflammation that we experience, whether our joints or our skin or, any sort of other aspect of inflammation, garlic and onions, and apples are going to be the best bet for that. All right. So I will move on to the next slide. So this is just a list by color of all these different fruits and vegetables. Well, in this case, the vegetable list. Even though some of us would say that tomatoes are a fruit, you know, we won't get into that argument, but trying to aim for, you know, vegetables, again, the serving, the ratio, just like I was talking about that omega-3, omega-6, your veggie intake should be higher than your fruit intake. So the ratio again is 2 to 1. So 8 servings of veggies a day to your 4 servings of fruits a day. And then we'll talk about the fruits themselves. Again, that same list by color code. Those are examples. And so, yeah, so I'll just go into the weekly action item and the challenge. So pretty much looking for tripping over my words today. Sorry. So high fiber carbohydrate foods that have at least 3 grams of protein. 3 grams of fiber. I was looking down and saw protein, including lean protein sources at each meal to help build lean muscle, maintain the immune system, and stay satisfied. So a rule of thumb when you're trying to figure out how much protein to get into your diet, this was another question that somebody else had. It kind of the easiest way is, let's say you take your weight, you divide it in half. So if I took my weight and let's say it's 190, you know, that I would be aiming for 85 grams of protein just to maintain, you know, the normal functions of my body. But, you know, that's going to vary if I have a weight loss goal or if I have a goal to build muscle. You know, they're still the same sort of goal in that sense of, you know, needing protein no matter what the goal is. And so you may need more than that, you know, well, I may need more than that 75 grams. So if you're aiming for at least 4 ounces of meat or something that at least has, let's say, you know, 20 grams of protein or 25 grams of protein per meal, you know, you would definitely meet the minimum requirement. But if you need more, that's where, you know, maybe supplementing with a snack or 2 would be helpful. All right, so the next piece, incorporating anti-inflammatory and omega-3 fatty acids or healthy fats into your game plan. Again, aiming for good sources, and then just incorporating those in your meal. We'll talk about portion sizes when it comes to the next piece of this, which is going to be the next week. And then adding fruits and veggies into, you know, onto your plate for each meal. You know, try something new, really kind of broaden your horizons and, you know, see what you like. I know kids are picky, so usually try to sneak fruits and veggies into their diet. You know, but they're, you know, they're picky eaters. But of course, we are all kids once. And so lastly, you know, there's a challenge activity. I want you to snap a picture of a meal that you know, either made or you ordered, and, you know, tell me about it. Tell me, you know, maybe a takeaway of what you learned from this webinar, or, you know, if you have a question. But again, you know, the whole point around these next 4 weeks of webinars is to really learn something, especially if you're watching them collectively, you know, all 4 videos. You know, there are takeaway pieces. You know, I still learn things every day, even though I'm nutrition certified. You know, I am not a dietitian. So I try to, you know, for me, it's all about making suggestive, you know, points and hoping that they stick and that you learn something from it. But otherwise, if you have something that's a little deeper that requires, you know, a more professional, you know, viewpoint, is to go talk to a dietitian or a registered, you know, nutrition person. Um, but otherwise, if there are any other questions, don't be afraid to ask. You know the email address. Just give me a shout. But thank you for coming, everyone, and I'm glad that you enjoyed the presentation. See ya.